Aquarius Draw is a free design utility that I developed a few years ago now as a web application for the small but pretty active online community of Mattel Aquarius fans. The Mattel Aquarius was an old 1980s, early 80s home computer 8-bit that had very limited hardware and software, not very many titles released, and it was probably the shortest 8-bit ever on the market. But even with all of that, and you've got a very limited 16 color palette, which is basically 8 colors, then slight shades of those colors, and a character ROM that was fixed. So you only had these 256 glyphs to do everything you needed. And even with that, if I go to the gallery here, you can see that with some creativity, users using my design tool and making Aquarius compatible artwork basically, or splash screens, title screens, etc., you can get very creative if you have the talent and the time. And so shout out to Sean Harrington, who is the designer behind most of these as I scroll through here. Very clever use of the limited character palette. But anyways, this is not really a tutorial about the entire system. I think Sean and some others have actually made videos about this already. But I did want to cover the brand new features that I've just introduced or will be introducing within moments after I share this video probably. But Aquarius Plus is a brand new open source modern computer that's compatible with the original Aquarius, but offers many new and much invited features, including customized color palettes, customized and dynamically loadable character ROMs, and even sprite support. So I am just going to use this time to very quickly talk about those 3 new features of this tool. The character editor is definitely the most significant change in this version of Aquarius Draw, and so I will get into that now. On the left side, you have your default character selector as always, and you can just click into whichever glyph you want to use and then draw as you wish. In fact, I'll just load up an example scene just to make some of this easier to understand here. But if you right click anywhere in that character selector, you'll see a few new options. First off, I have this undock character selector option now, which I thought might be more convenient and useful now that we're able to load custom character ROMs. And if you select that, it'll just undock that character selector into a 16 by 16 square pattern, which probably maps better to some of these character maps that you might load in. So it might make finding certain glyphs a little easier in arrangement, but just a convenience thing. At any point, you can right click and redock that selector there. It's also important to keep in mind that by default, I have the character ROM sorted sort of logically. And if you're going to be loading custom character ROMs or editing them in particular ways, I'd recommend switching this to original layout, which then is 0 to 255 indexed exactly how it appears in the character ROM, just so that maps properly for clarity when you're editing it, because that always will be in this layout. So if we right click, and you'll also see you've got load character ROM, edit character ROM, and save character ROM, as well as reset to the default character ROM. These are pretty much self-explanatory. If we click load character ROM, this will expect a 2KB character binary file. And so it essentially is byte data for all 256 glyphs. And so here's the blocks one, and this just converts the letter type to a block format. So if I double click that, you'll see as it loads here, all of the characters and everything using any one of these altered glyphs will suddenly update in real time, because it's all borrowing from this. Now, if we want to reset, we can just right click, select default character ROM, and that will revert everything back at any point. And you can also save out the character ROM as it appears here at any point by just using that right click context or through the editor itself. And let's get into that part right now. Let's say we want to edit the heart symbol here. So I will first select it from the character selector as usual, and then I can just right click anywhere and go to edit character ROM. And by default, it will pre-fill with whatever character we have selected. On the right side, you have the full character selector, and it's in proper ROM format, so it goes from index 0 in the top left to index 255 in the bottom right. And on the left, you have the pretty familiar tile editing capabilities, so you just left click anywhere to either remove or add ink to create kind of a new design as you wish. Now, as I go through here, you'll notice it's being updated on the tile map index here, as well as the top preview in the header, which also indicates what index we are editing. If you want to save that image, our current design out as just a 8x8 ping, you can right click on this top image and just select Save Image. And in the top left, if you hover over that, it will show you a full generation of the entire character map. And that's all 256 characters baked into a single ping, where you can then right click and save that image to load it into any number of external sprite editors. So that's very useful. You also, by default, I think I mentioned that, but if not, you have the black ink toggle down here. So by default, Aquarius does expect white ink on black background or transparent background. If you prefer to work with black ink, you can toggle that option here, and then that will invert everything. So you can just carry on designing it as you wish, and just remembering now black is the ink and white is, or transparent white is the paper. This is actually particularly useful if you happen to be importing a ping, which I'll show in a minute. And if that ping uses white, or if it has white paper and a black ink, you'd have to have this option checked before you import it. Otherwise, Aquarius assumes the white will be the ink. So just something to keep in mind. At the bottom here, you have different utility classes. So file name here is just a convenience thing, not necessary. But if you load a character ROM or are planning to save one, you can fill this out to pre-populate the save dialog with that file name. You also have some utility classes here. So you've got a clear option, which just completely erases the current tile, fills it, which does the opposite, inverts, which I'll show you in a second, and reset will reset back to whatever state that character glyph was in when you first selected it, or when you first opened the editor, if you haven't clicked off yet. So I will click reset, and you can see it restores that original heart shape now. And just to show you what the invert does, that converts the ink to the paper and the paper to the ink, which can be very useful for any number of sort of inverting effects for different characters and things like that. We also have various rotational and mirroring options. So if I select the caret symbol, for instance, and I'll just put a little corner mark there, we can rotate 90 degrees at a time by clicking this button. So we can real rapidly create 4 variants of a certain glyph without doing too much effort. You also have mirror vertically, mirror horizontally options. So you can combine any number of these to just do, you know, a variety of things with the characters that are here or whatever you edit and create on your own. Now, if you want to rearrange the ordering of these characters, which can be very useful for different games and stuff like that, and programmatically accessing them and stuff. So say, for instance, we want these 4 arrows to appear at index 0, 1, 2, and 3 at the top here. We can click on the first one and then hold in the shift key on the keyboard and then just click where we want to swap it, and this will swap both characters. And you can do that as many times as you need to swap in or out the different character sets here. And I think we've covered most things except for the loading. Now, this is actually probably one of the coolest features here. So, and it's worth noting that the character map, these are the alphabets and stuff. This is all ASCII mapped. So I will show you how useful that actually is here. But let's say we want to import graphics that are already a 8x8 tile map from someone else, or from your own design on a different utility. You can go down and click the open option here. First, you want to select, I should clarify. So if we are opening a fixed character ROM, that's the 2K expected character ROM, it will replace every single character in there. So if I reload the blocks one, you'll see it has completely overwritten everything here with that specialized block character ROM. But if we only want to replace select indexes here, we can click to select which one we want to start by replacing. Then you can click open and find an image instead. And depending on the size of the image, it will populate as many as it needs to. So for instance, if we go into the Kenny folder, which is a very nice free roguelike monochrome 8x8 tile map here, and I think there's like 180 characters or something like that. But if we So I've selected right below all the ASCII characters and stuff. So that's where it will begin loading. And if we double click on that, you'll see it starts loading its processing. And then right there, we have replaced all of these rows of characters with this custom character set. But the ASCII is still unchanged because that character set only included graphics and didn't do anything with the ASCII lettering type stuff. So that's super useful because now we can actually go back to like the space, which would be the start index 32 of ASCII mapping, and we can load another one in here. And I grabbed a couple, and I have a link on the Aquarius help website, and I can link that in the YouTube description here too. But there's sites that have hundreds of like Spectrum fonts and Atari fonts and other things that people have converted into pings already in ASCII order. So if let's just load in the Blood Rain, for instance, and we'll just double click on this, and you can see it loads it again, and suddenly we've replaced all the characters. So that's pretty awesome here. Now it did replace the space, so we will just clear that out, and then it replaced the solid, so we can just click fill, and now that quickly we have completely overhauled the 256 characters with a custom roguelike imagery and a custom sort of horror themed font there. And if we want to save this out as a custom ROM that can be loaded into Aquarius Plus, we can click the save button right there and just give it a name and then use basic programming to load that in. If we're set though, we can also just click the checkbox and it will load it up. Now, obviously all the characters have changed, so the design has too. But you can see if we just reset the canvas, now we have this pretty nice looking, very different looking sort of options here. And if I right click and undock, then you get it in that same layout that we had just seen. So you can quickly get to what you need to. And that in a nutshell is the character editor. I've reset the scene here in the properties and loaded up that default HUD template again to explore the color picker now. With Aquarius Plus, we are no longer limited to just these 16 colors. We can select from any of 4,096 colors to replace any one of these indexes across 4 different palettes. So in Aquarius, this is pretty straightforward, but what I have done here is, so if you right click any color that you want to customize, for instance, the dark red here, I will right click and you have a few different options. So again, if you want to reset all of the colors up here to the default, you can click default color palette. You can load a color palette file, which in the near future will be loadable within Aquarius Plus Basic. You can save the color palette, and these are binary files similar to character ROMs that store the 16 color indexes. Or we can do the custom color selector. Now, when we open this up, the character editor or character selector will be replaced by this sort of true color selector. And then simply as you move your mouse around, you can see in real time what the color updates to within the scene, if there's that color being used already. And if we are satisfied with a certain alternate color that we've selected, we can simply left click to commit that change. So that's convenient. Now let's just, the default blue background, if we right click that and select custom color again, you can very rapidly just experiment with different colors and how you want them to appear. Now, if you do have a specific color in mind, you can click on this top preview option to load up another various manual color picker where you can specify the RGB values, HSL values, or hex values, or select, through this, or even use the eyedropper for anywhere in your computer or monitor to pick an appropriate color. And it is worth noting that these are all true color, 16 million color possibilities, but it does in real time downscale that to the proper 3-digit hex value that will support Aquarius. So what you see here is the proper color. So if let's just commit to this blue here, and so I'll click that green apply button at the top, and now you can see we've got that slightly darker blue, and if you hover over it, you can see the hex value right there. So with that, that's the way we can customize the color palette now. And if we right click, you can again save that out as a binary color palette file. And there is some data that I have that is just kind of makeshift basic data that you can paste right into emulator or anything to sort of dynamically change the palette by copying the code there. So that's the color picker. And finally, we get to the Sprite Editor. Now, this is really sort of a shoehorned in feature and certainly not comparable to any of the probably thousands of Sprite editors out there, but it's mostly designed so that you can quickly copy the Aquarius generated and Aquarius needed code for using sprites within the programming. So I'll just show you here. If you right click anywhere on the border, you now have an option called 8x8 grid sprite mode. If you enable that, it splits up the main scene into 8x8 compartments, and each one can be thought of as an isolated sprite that Aquarius can support. And this is really just for design purposes here. So then with the solid character selected, which is character 127, you use the foreground and you just draw whatever you want in any one of these grids. And when you are satisfied with whatever you've created, you can then right click anywhere in that 8x8 cell and you'll see a bunch of new options here. If you select copy sprite data 8x8, what this does, and I'll show you in Notepad here, is that just generates the raw byte data for the colors of all 64 pixels in there. And this is compatible with Aquarius sprite commands. And there's some guides, and it's still a work in progress with Plus Basic, but you can go on the GitHub for this project and check out the Wikipedia for Aquarius Plus and Plus Basic to understand how to work with sprites in the system. But effectively, this is the important part here, the binary data that can be translated into an actual sprite on screen. So you also, when you right click, have the option to load images, and it will stretch or shrink whatever to fit with while preserving the aspect ratio. So if we do, let's just load a 16 by 16, and I have like a Mario example here, and you can see real quickly that just loaded in the full Mario shape, and you can use any of your normal tools. Like I just middle clicked for the eyedropper, and then you can just kind of make any refinements you want, however you want. And then starting in the top left, like if we want to copy all four of these quadrants here, you can right click in the top left and just select copy sprite data 16 by 16. And that just generated this code, which you can work into your programs however you need for sprite handling. We also, if you right click, have the option to override palette with sprite colors. If we check that, and then load in a sprite, we'll reload Swimming Mario maybe, you will see that it actually has updated some of the colors up here, however many colors this had, up to 16. My recommendation if you're loading in a ping is to make sure it has 14 or fewer colors to begin with. That way we will be able to preserve the black, which acts as transparency, and the blue, which also can act as transparency if nothing's been filled out here. So I would recommend, before loading them in, to just, if you can, make sure that they're 14 or fewer colors, but you can load up to 16 and it'll just replace all of the colors in the palette, which then you might need to customize. But that's if that option is checked. And then again, you can copy the data and work with it however you want within the Aquarius programming. So hopefully within these features, the new character editor, color selector, and sprite editor, there are quite a few new useful tools for the Aquarius developers out there. And again, if you do want to, like even now, even with this custom character or color, we can right click and select custom color selector. And there you can see just how rapidly we can change any of these things to our liking. So with that, I will say have fun.